Hey guys, we looked at the roll-off E14 electronically shifted internally geared hub the other day, and I thought it'd be neat to look at the Enviolo N380, and we've got the SE Special Edition on these two recent Mueller products here. It's a sportive or cargo application capable of taking a little bit more torque, 100 Newton meters continuously or 120 peak. Very interesting to see this system evolve over the years. It used to be just Fallbrook Technologies NuVinci. And over time, as they've implemented on more platforms, they've changed this Enviolo name. So I spoke with someone from the company earlier today, and that was like, so what does that even mean? And he was like, well, NVO, NuVinci Optimized. It's a really, slick branding. You can see the black here, black on black, a little bit of improvements here, maybe refinements on the display. I've always really liked this. You can shift at standstill, and you've got that little infographic showing the dude, if he's on flats, that means you're gonna go faster, and maybe you're riding on flats. If you need a little bit of help getting started or climbing, you twist that forward and it looks like a hill. We've got a 2017 model over here before they went to the Enviolo, and you can see it says Infinity C8. It's silver. It looks a little bit different. And same thing with the hub. This used to have some orange accents and stuff. I really like the direction this brand is going. This is Chris Nolte from Propel Bikes. These are some of his recent Mueller products, and we've been discussing this and planning to do some of these fun videos to give you guys an overview and also do some review footage and stuff. Tell me, what's your experience been with these? It's definitely priced a little bit higher than just a traditional cassette derailleur.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a cool product. I mean, we've worked with them a little bit in the past, but more recently, much more since recent Mueller has come to the U.S., where they're actually their largest customer worldwide.
Oh,
so
wow.
They make Enviolo available on almost all of their models, and it's a really big deal. And for them, the idea is it's low maintenance, really easy to use. It's possible to couple it with a belt, which makes the maintenance even lower. And overall, it's been really good experience. And we've seen really great reliability with them. And as you mentioned, bike share. So originally, in Brooklyn, Motivate, the company that manages bike share, recently bought.
Oh yeah, for like $250 million.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Wow. So they do City Bike and most of the other major cities throughout the country. Nice. And they started rolling out NuVinci or Enviolo to their bike share program, and they've seen a lot of success, and they're going to actually continue to do so. So that's kind of a vote of confidence in a lot of ways. So we're really embracing the product, and it's been great.
Okay. Well, I really like the interface here. I've always enjoyed being able to shift at standstill, and for people who are maybe new to cycling, or maybe you've cycled a bit in the past, but you're on a bike share bike that isn't fit super properly, and maybe it's a little bit heavy. Now you've got a shifting mechanism that's very easy to use and gives you that standstill ability. But let's talk about some of the trade-offs here, because there definitely are some trade-offs. We're looking at the mechanically shifted, sort of the manual shifting Enviolo N380 SE. The SE is special edition, can handle higher torque, up to 100 Newton meters continuous, up to 120 peak, and that's great because we've got a Bosch Performance Line CX. This is their high torque motor system, up to 75 Newton meters of output. So this is more than capable of handling that. But you're shifting manually. So when we turn this half grip shifter up here, I have to use some effort, and especially if I'm pedaling at the same time, it gets even more difficult. They do have another product that is electronically shifted, and that's called the Harmony. Okay, and it has a very similar looking half grip twister here, but there's a little silver button, and you can change between sort of manually changing ratios or having it automatically keep a set cadence. Okay, and you might think like, well, manually, this is manual. Well, there's a difference. It sends electronic signals, and then a little motor does the shifting for you. Whereas in this case, I'm actually kind of pulling on these two cables, and you can see them down here. Chris, will you shift a little bit while we? Sure. Okay, yeah, and you can see this little piece here going back and forth, and there are these different markings. So there's 380 degrees of gearing ratio. That's equivalent to if you had a 10 to 38 tooth cassette in the back. Okay, and a lot of times I'll see like 11 to 32 or 11 to 36. So 10 to 38, that's a pretty wide spread. you know, there are other systems out there. We were looking at the roll-off E14, and it has like 526 degrees.
That's right. Yeah,
it's a little
that's
bit wider.
It's pretty much the widest internal hub available.
But it's stepped.
It is.
This is fluid. So there's no real, I mean, you can just tiny shift, like change your cadence just a little bit. It's not like clunk, clunk, clunk. And so that's one of the benefits of this system. Another one of the trade-offs, however, is that it's kind of heavy. So that's like 2.4 kilograms. It's fairly, you know,
5.5 pounds.
5.5 pounds,
right.
A little bit more. Whereas I think the E14 was about 4 pounds.
Yeah, about 4 pounds. Yeah.
What was that? 1.8 kilograms or something like that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of like, yeah, you're definitely adding a little bit more weight here. And on a bike like this, this is the culture. It's a full suspension model that's very fun, comfortable to ride and everything, but you know, ideally you'd want less weight on the wheels. That's unsprung weight, so you've got that additional 1.5 pounds back here. A traditional cassette with, you know, the 11 to 36 that we were talking about, maybe a Shimano Dior derailleur, that's probably just 1.5 pounds. So 1 to 2 pounds depending on the component level group set that you get. So there's definitely some weight here. We've got those 2 wires that are coming back versus just 1 on a lot of derailleurs. Is that right, or are there any that you know that are 2?
The roll-off is one of the only others that has the 2 cable system.
Okay, so this is back to, how about like Shimano Alpine? And
yeah, that's a single cable system.
Very interesting. So it's a minor thing here, guys, but you know, we do have kind of these 2 cables running along the frame. So I'm really trying to be thorough here and give you the feedback. So we talked about how we've got the manual shifting, we've got the electronic shifting, and in that case, maybe it's just 1 signal that's going back, and then it's got 2 cables at the very back. And then we have H-Sync, which says, okay, you know, you had a battery and you had to have this electronic shifting thing that's sort of separate from your drive system. This is an e-bike. We have a battery, we have a display already. So what if we integrated the 2? And that's what H-Sync is. So there are a few companies that have done this. I think Tempo is one of them.
Well, Piaggio had it on theirs as well, and then there's Flyer in Europe.
And
so
Butchers and Bicycles.
So Butchers and Bicycles is one of the only brands in the U.S. that does that. It's on a cargo bike application specifically. But yeah, it's utilizing the Bosch E-Shift system. So, they have a close relationship working with NuVinci. And there's actually some of the other companies working with them as well. For a couple years, Continental has been introducing this concept of introducing NuVinci technology into the drive system all in one.
Like into the motor system.
That's right.
So it's not even a hub, it's like all the same thing. Wow.
Yeah. I got to check it out at Eurobike, but at the moment it seems like it's not really ready for the market, but it does, you know, the concept seems really great, and it's kind of maybe give us a glimpse into the future of what's to come.
It's exciting. I feel like a lot of what we're talking about is future oriented. I mean, we just got the manually shifting Enviolo. We've only seen the H-Sync on a couple bikes, and you carry the Butchers and Bicycles, and it's kind of a neat application, a cargo bike, which is a little bit smarter. In that case, you don't have like the twister here. You just do everything through the display system. So in this case, we have an Intuvia and then the button pad. I believe it's also going to be compatible with the Kiox, the new color one.
That's right, yeah. So the eShip will be, and you know, some companies make the intentional decision to not do H-Sync, even though maybe, you know, it is a possibility. You know, that's Risa Mueller's choice. They pretty much only do the non electronic shifting version. And basically the idea is that you can control it a lot more with the manual version, and it's maybe a little bit more sporty and that sort of thing.
I see.
There's some of the challenges associated with the electronic shifting, like when you approach a hill, can't really predict the hill exists, so maybe there's certain things like that that the system can't adapt to.
Manually, you can just anticipate it and you sort of downshift on the way in.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about here. With this drive system, Bosch Performance line in particular, you get 120 RPM support. So you can pedal at a high cadence, and that comes back to being able to shift down and really take advantage of those lower gears. There are 2 ways to adjust the performance. So there's 380 degrees of sort of gearing potential inside the hub, but then you've also got this sprocket in the rear, and then that belt ring or chain ring up front. So depending on the size of those, in this case I think it's 26 tooth up front, 28 in the back, but you could go smaller or larger to sort of optimize for a speed application or more of a climbing cargo application. And Risa Mueller has the Enviolo system on some of their speed bikes.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it works well. I mean, talking about a little bit the efficiency, the Enviolo system is not as efficient as, say, like a derailleur or a roll-off hub, because you lose a little bit in the process.
There's traction fluid inside. There's these balls, you guys. That's why I keep saying planetary. It's like you've got these orbs, metal orbs, and then there's like this pivot thing on top of them. And in order for this rear sprocket to spin at one speed and then have the rear spin at another, you're sort of pivoting between those two ratios, and then the fluid, the traction fluid, helps to create that grab.
That's right. Yeah. And so a lot of times people ask, like, oh, I want the fastest bike I can get and this and that. We generally would say, you might want to go with the bike with the roll-off or a derailleur or something like that. But if you want something that's just really simple to operate and very low maintenance, Enviolo is a great way to go.
And you're saying fast, but if these are powered by a Bosch drive system, I've had no trouble getting up to 20 miles per hour on this. I had no trouble getting up to 28 on some of the Speed Pedal X that we've looked at. It's more just like if you're pedaling without support, or if you're trying to pedal beyond that, there's a little bit more drag. There's kind of a sluggish feeling sometimes, and we called this out in the review the other day. I was like, why is that? It feels like the Enviolo NuVinci, sometimes they feel a little bit slower, and you said...
Yeah, so there is a break-in period, and that's something that a lot of times people don't always consider. Really, the first 500 miles or so, the hub is still breaking in, and at that time it's not at its optimal efficiency. But after that period, it will be a lot more efficient, and you might not feel as spongy as sometimes people will
it
say.
does. I have felt that, and so it's good that you're calling that out. I welcome feedback and comments and stuff as usual, you guys. We're doing our best here. I've ridden a bunch of these systems, including way back when it was just NuVinci. I like a lot of this is just aesthetic updates, but it is cool to see the SC giving you a little bit higher torque rating, and then also some different hub spacing options. So I think traditionally it was just 135 millimeter, so that's the spacing right here in the rear hub, but now they also have 142 and 148, which is like boost. And then coming back, I realize I'm jumping around here a little bit, but manual, harmony, electronic but not integrated, H-Sync integrated with Bosch or Panasonic for now, and then E-Shift. So Chris said this earlier, but the Bosch system is measuring your rear wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque over 1,000 times per second. It's also listening for like pressure changes if you're using a traditional derailleur, and it's sensing that for shift detection, and it sort of eases off a little bit. But with the roll-off E14, it was actually listening for shifting signals, and proactively, it wasn't responding to pressure changes, it's more proactively cutting out so that it can shift smoother. And I think that's also the case with the H-Sync integration, Bosch plus NuVinci.
Yeah, for all the Bosch E-Shift applications, there is that communication, which is
so cool.
Yeah, a really big deal.
And it just makes it probably a little easier, uses a little less power. As I was saying, if I'm pedaling hard and the motor's like full blast and I'm manually shifting, it just it really doesn't want to change because there's a lot of pressure on that drivetrain. So it's neat to see how the integration of these electronic systems and the sensors and the relationships are turning out products that are a little bit smarter and more efficient. That way.
Yeah, and I just want to know, I mean, you're saying, if you are trying to shift under power, it is something it takes a little getting used to, compared to shifting a normal derailleur, which you have to be pedaling. But with the internal hub, really any internal hub, you kind of have to back off a little bit. And when you do that and you kind of get in the swing of things, it's pretty natural. Yeah,
it's a sweet system, man. So if you wanted to add this aftermarket, you potentially could. I think because they have the manual version of the N380 SE, you could get that in the different hub spacing, 135, 142, 148. You could work with the shop. You can only do manual. I don't think they sell Harmony or H-Sync aftermarket, so it would look just like this, and you could install this on your bike with the help of a local shop. And what's the pricing on something like this, Chris?
For parts, it's probably about $500, but it's going to be a little bit more. Think about it, you also have to build a wheel around it and do different things like that.
Oh man, so it doesn't necessarily come spoked in.
Yeah, and we've done a few, but it's not something that we'd like to do often. I mean, generally speaking, the way that we look at it, if there exists a bike out there that kind of fits your needs, we really encourage somebody to kind of go with that bike that's purpose-built, especially when you're talking about an e-bike, that everything is kind of integrated and connected, really very intentional. you know, if you were to say retrofit this on a bike that had a derailleur, then it might not work in the same way, because that motor system, the software on it's not really made for that purpose.
Yeah, I agree. And coming back to purpose built, you look at something like this with like an internally mounted battery that stays out of the way, gives you low standover height. The frame is designed to take the extra forces of the motor and the weight and everything like that. I mean, there's lots of reasons, but I think that's just another one. So I did want to call that out because people mentioned that on the roll-off. They're like, can I add that to my bike? And it was like, not really. They're only working with Bosch. They're only, you know, on pre-built e-bikes. It's not an aftermarket thing. We might see more of this in the future, but it's so cool to see even the N330, which has the lower range, still available for bike shares. That's really like giving me some confidence in it. I might just connect the camera to the frame here and do a little bit of riding, give you guys some up close shots. Is there anything else you have to add, Chris?
No, I think that, I mean, I think you did mention the N330, which is the smaller gear range. We are finding that on some bikes. Like we actually sell a mustache bike, the Lundy, that will be available with the N330.
That's their urban one. Is that with an active line motor too?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
And basically their concept was that, you know, maybe you don't need that huge range. It's a 20-mile-an-hour bike, not a huge amount of power, but it's something, it's, you know, plenty for getting around the city, and it's just something, you know, really simple to use. So there are some different applications for that outside of just bike share, but that's one of the, you know, major ones, and it's something that's kind of shifting this that business, I think, you know, seeing that Enviolo being launched on major bike share, you know, operations like that.
Economies of scale. Good for them. Yeah, it was so nice. What was the guy that we talked to?
Yeah, Abellino. Yeah, he's the business development manager in the U.S., and then he's also manages bike share globally. So he's working with companies like Motivate, and when we did some work with them, we were working with him as well. It's really cool to see these evolutions take place and people thinking about it differently. You know, we were talking about this before, that in the US, traditionally, internally geared hubs were not as big of a thing because the market in the US traditionally has always been so focused around sport. Yeah. But internal hubs make so much sense in, you know, riding in urban environments and where maintenance is, you know, more of a priority of keeping low maintenance.
Cleanliness. I mean, look at this. There's no derailleur hanging down, really. It's all just like tucked in here, so it's not going to get banged up at a bike rack, or if the bike tips, it's easy to shift on the fly. What's the maintenance process here? Because with like the roll-off, you have that oil change kit and stuff. What is this like?
Yeah, so on the Enviolo hub, there's actually no maintenance to the internals of the hub. Over time, you probably will need to replace the cables because they're cables and they can kind of get stretched out, or the housing can get compressed with more commonly.
Is there a tune-up? I mean, what if they get stretched? Like, what happens?
So they're standard shifter cables. There's just 2 of them instead of 1. And basically, yeah, you can remove them and swap them out. It's a pretty straightforward process. And the only other thing we've really seen over time is sometimes this kind of cassette joint gets worn out, but they're actually some of the newer models have a little bit more heavy duty, and I think that we're going to see them lasting a lot longer. But really, the maintenance is very, very low, and nothing on the internal of the hub, which is a really big deal, and I think unique specifically just to Enviolo.
Huh. Okay. So maybe that extra weight, you know, you get the extra durability.
That's the sort of stuff that you really got to consider. Like, what are the trade-offs? What's really important? Does it really need to be, you know, that much lighter? That sort of thing. But I think that the pros outweigh a lot of the cons for many applications, but not for everybody.
For pricing wise, though, let's say we're going from the Touring to the Vario, which is what Reese Mueller calls it. And by the way, it was like, what does that even mean? I mean, the name is Enviolo, we've got NuVinci, and now there's this Vario terminology. It seems like just an in-house like marketing phrase they came up with, but it is a continuously variable transmission. So it's probably Vario, you know?
Yeah, that was our thought. And yeah, so talking about the pricing difference going from a derailleur to Enviolo, probably around $400 or $500.
Okay,
you know, because
reasonable. These are mechanical.
Yeah, and basically, because if you think about it, you're not just upgrading the hub. You're in the case of Reese Mueller and some other brands, you're oftentimes coupling that with the belt as well.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is generally speaking, the belt is more expensive, the cogs are more expensive, these little details can definitely add to the price, but they also increase the maintenance intervals. So if you're a heavy use rider, in those instances, a lot of those upfront costs are really a good investment.
Okay, that's fantastic, man. I'm glad we spent a few more minutes. I know that my reviews and these interview kind of tech talks go a little bit long, but there is so much to explore. And again, I do look at your comments and stuff and then share with Chris, and we talk about just how to address those. So I hope this satisfies, and let's get out there and do a little ride.
Let's do it.
I'm going to be shifting through so you can see some movement. You're probably not going to be able to hear the shifting, but you will be able to hear that Bosch Performance Line CX motor. And as I change the gearing ratio, the motor, that sound will change. So it'll kind of go to a higher pitch noise when I'm in a higher cadence, or a more quieter when I'm in low speed pedaling. Let's do it. Very cool, just so smooth. You don't have those steps like you do with most internally geared hubs or cassette. Okay guys, we're on the disc brake side now, and you're actually connected to the kickstand. You can see some dust here. These bikes are fairly new and clean, but some of that might be brake dust, and then just residue and riding around the city and stuff. It's really interesting just how well sealed these are, how durable they are against water, dust, or sand, or whatever. I think that's definitely one of the strong points of this system. It's neat that you can just shift it and get to that lower gear without even having to move. You just start pedaling and it's right there in that easier gear. Now as I pedal, the Bosch system is actually pretty cool. It gives you like a shift recommendation, sort of arrows up and says, hey, you're not being very efficient. There it is, a little arrow. So I can just shift just like that. Everything works fine. But then pretty quickly, you hit a stop sign just like this, and maybe you didn't shift down, you were focused on the stop sign or the hill or whatever, and there we go. We're back in that low gear. So it's just a really cool system that way. Okay guys, I think that's about it. It's been fun to look at this CVT, Continuously Variable Planetary Transmission. If there's anything else you want to see guides on, chime in the comments. I am checking those out. We're probably going to do something on belt drives and stuff. Maybe even the motors, talk about each individual motor and what a good application is for that. Otherwise, I'm going to be reviewing Reese & Mueller and a bunch of other brands as usual. I'll see you back at the site, ElectricBikeReview.com. Have fun, ride safe.